After finishing my 12-hour night shift, I dragged my exhausted body back to my apartment. Working as a pediatric nurse takes its toll, both physically and mentally. Tonight I'd been glued to the side of a baby with a fever, and had only just gotten her symptoms under control. All I wanted was to take a shower and get some sleep. The moment I unlocked my front door, my cell phone rang. It was my mother, Patricia. She wasn't the type to call unless she needed something. I had a bad feeling about this. "Meredith, I need you to go to Lauren's house right now." My mother's voice was as flat and matter-of-fact as always. "Lauren fell down the stairs and she's in the hospital. You need to take Zoe." My sister Lauren was in the hospital. I felt my exhaustion vanish in an instant. I tried to ask for details, but Mother had already hung up. That was typical. She never said more than the bare minimum. I quickly changed clothes and got in my car. Lauren's house was in an upscale neighborhood. Her husband Derek ran a successful real estate company, and they lived in an impressive single-family home. When I arrived at the front door, Derek was waiting with it already open. He was dressed as usual in a pressed shirt and chinos, but his face showed clear signs of fatigue. "Thanks for coming, Meredith." My wife was careless. Derek sighed as he spoke. His voice held a mixture of worry and exhaustion. I stepped inside the house. The living room was perfectly organized, not even a single magazine out of place. On the sofa sat 5-year-old Zoe, quiet as a statue. "Zoe, you be a good girl at your aunt's house now." Derek spoke in a gentle voice as he patted his daughter's head. Zoe just nodded slightly, saying nothing. I knelt down to try to meet her eyes, but she kept her gaze fixed on the floor. "Is Lauren going to be okay?" I asked Derek. "The doctor wants to keep her for observation. I'm going to adjust my work schedule so I can be with her as much as possible." His words carried a sense of responsibility. Derek was active in local charity work and was known in the neighborhood as an exemplary husband and father. I'd always thought he was a good husband for my sister. When I got Zoe into the car, she shrank into the back seat. I looked at her in the rearview mirror and spoke in a cheerful voice. "Are you hungry? Is there anything you'd like to eat?" Zoe shook her head. "I have to ask Daddy first." Her voice was so small I could barely hear it. I smiled. "You don't need to be shy. It's just you and me, so tell me what you'd like." But Zoe remained silent. Maybe she was just at a shy age. I didn't think much of it and drove on. When we arrived at my apartment, I showed Zoe to the guest room. It was small, but it had a bed and a desk, and the window looked out onto the trees lining the street. "This is your room for now. Make yourself at home." I tried to sound as cheerful as possible, but Zoe just stood in the corner of the room without moving. It was as if she was trying to blend into the wall. I fed her dinner and we watched TV together. Zoe stared at the screen but never laughed or showed much reaction at all. When night came, I was exhausted and went back to my own room. Before falling asleep, I decided to check on Zoe one more time. I opened the door quietly to find her curled up at the edge of the bed. The blanket had fallen to the foot of the bed, and she had nothing covering her. I approached quietly, picked up the blanket, and laid it over her. At that moment, Zoe's body jerked and she woke up. Her large eyes stared at me, and then I heard a small voice. "I'm sorry." Why was she apologizing? I was confused, but I smiled gently. "It's okay. Good night." Zoe closed her eyes again. I left the room and lay down in my own bed. Maybe she'd had a bad dream. Kids are like that. That's what I told myself as I fell asleep. The next morning, I got up early and made breakfast for Zoe. Toast and scrambled eggs with orange juice. Simple, but the kind of menu kids usually like. Zoe sat at the table and began eating quietly. Her handling of the fork was careful, and she didn't spill anything. I thought she was a well-mannered child. But when she'd eaten about half, Zoe suddenly stopped. There was still food on her plate. "Are you full?" I asked. Zoe nodded slightly, but her eyes remained fixed on the plate. It was as if she regretted leaving the remaining food. I figured she was just a light eater and didn't ask anything more. Before my morning hospital shift, I decided to visit my sister's hospital room. Lauren was in a private room on the 3rd floor. When I opened the door, my sister was lying in the bed by the window. She had purple bruises on her face and a cast on her left arm. Looking at her medical chart, I saw that she'd also fractured 2 ribs. "Lauren." I sat down at my sister's bedside. Lauren smiled, but there was something forced about it. "Meredith, you came. Is Zoe okay?" "Yes, she's a quiet, good girl. But look at you, these injuries are terrible." Lauren shrugged lightly. "Clumsy, right?" I slipped on the stairs. "It's embarrassing." She tried to laugh, but the movement must have caused pain because she winced. I was about to say something when the door opened. Derek came in carrying a large bouquet of flowers. "Meredith, I didn't know you were here." Derek smiled warmly and arranged the flowers in a vase. Then he stood at his wife's bedside and gently took Lauren's hand. "I've been coming every day. I just want her to get better soon." Lauren looked up at her husband and smiled, but exhaustion showed through her expression. I felt out of place and left the room shortly after. A few days passed. As I spent more time with Zoe, I began to notice patterns in her behavior. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, she always stopped at exactly half of every meal. Even when she must have been hungry, she never finished her food. And she was sensitive to sounds. When a door closed, when dishes clinked together, when I raised my voice even a little, her body would stiffen. Nights were especially hard. Zoe woke up frequently, murmuring something in a small voice. One night, I stopped outside her room and listened carefully. I'll be good, I'll do it right." These were the words a 5-year-old child was repeating to herself in the middle of the night. My heart ached. The next day, I called my mother. "I'm a little concerned about Zoe. She always leaves half her food, and she wakes up several times during the night. Did something happen at Lauren's house?" My mother's response was curt. "That child is just high-strung. She takes after Lauren. Don't spoil her too much. Children will take advantage if you let them." That was all she said before hanging up. I stood there holding the phone for a while. Mother had always been like this. Cold, with a way of pushing people away. But this didn't feel like a matter of spoiling a child. During my break at work, I casually approached my colleague Dr. Helen Carter. Helen specialized in child psychology and knew more about children's behavior than anyone. "Helen, I need to ask you something." We sat down in the hospital cafeteria. "My niece that I'm looking after always leaves half her food. She seems hungry, but she always stops at exactly half." Helen picked up her coffee cup and thought for a moment. "Children have all kinds of reasons. It could be the change in environment. Give it some time. Some kids need a while to adjust to new places." I nodded. That could certainly be it. Zoe had suddenly been separated from her mother, after all. But that night, things changed. When I got home from work, Zoe was in the kitchen looking for something. She was opening drawers, looking up at the shelves. There was an urgency to her movements. "Zoe, what's wrong?" At my voice, Zoe turned around. Fear was written across her face. "Plastic wrap. I need to wrap up the food." "Food? But you already ate dinner, didn't you?" Zoe fell silent. I knelt down to try to meet her eyes, but she looked away. The next day, I decided to give Zoe a bath. She resisted getting undressed, but I gently persuaded her and helped her out of her clothes. That's when I gasped. Zoe's back was covered with old bruises. Some were turning yellow as they faded, others were still blue-purple. "Zoe, what happened here?" My voice was shaking. Zoe answered in a small voice. "I fell down." "When?" "I don't remember." She wouldn't look me in the eye. I felt something inside me crumbling. These weren't injuries from normal falls. As a nurse, I knew. These were the marks of repeated violence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard Zoe's voice from the next room. She seemed to be having a nightmare. I quietly opened the door and sat at her bedside. With her eyes still closed, Zoe was murmuring something. "I'm sorry, I'll do it right, please don't hit Mommy." My whole body went cold. "I'll be good, please, don't hit Mommy." These weren't words that should come from a 5-year-old child's mouth. I touched Zoe's forehead with trembling hands. She was sweating. The next morning, I contacted Helen again. This time we talked in her office, not the break room. I told her everything, Zoe's behavior patterns, the bruises on her back, and the words she said at night. Helen's expression changed. She looked at me with a serious face. "Meredith, those are typical behaviors of an abused child." I understood it intellectually. But my heart refused to accept it. Children try to protect their parents. Especially when they've been taught that if they act as a shield, their parent won't get hurt. Helen continued. Leaving half the food might be some kind of ritualistic behavior. She might be following a rule imposed by the abuser. I sank deep into my chair. That polite Derek. The man honored as an exemplary citizen in the community. But Zoe's words weren't lies. The bruises, the nighttime fear, it was all real. What should I do? My voice was hoarse. First, build trust with Zoe. Don't rush. Creating an environment where she feels safe is the top priority. Then you'll need to gather evidence. Helen squeezed my hand. This is something only you can do, Meredith. You might be the only one who can save that child. On the 5th morning of looking after Zoe, I decided to take the day off work. I called the hospital and said I needed personal leave. Today I wanted time to really be with Zoe. After breakfast, I asked Zoe a question. "Would you like to go to the park with me today?" Zoe looked a little surprised. Then she nodded slightly. We went to the neighborhood park. The autumn sun felt pleasant, and the leaves on the trees were starting to turn red and yellow. Zoe got on the swing, and when I gently pushed her, a faint smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. It was the first real smile I'd seen in 5 days. On the way back from the park, we passed an ice cream shop. "Want some ice cream?" When I asked, Zoe hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She chose strawberry flavor and slowly licked it with her small tongue. Watching her, I felt warmth in my chest. This child deserved more smiles. She should be able to be more childlike, more innocent. When we got home, I asked Zoe what she wanted for dinner. "What would you like to eat tonight?" Zoe answered shyly. "Hamburger." "That sounds good. Let's make it together." We stood in the kitchen, kneading ground meat and shaping patties. Zoe was working hard with her small hands to form them into rounds. When the hamburgers were done cooking, they filled the room with a wonderful aroma. I set the table with the hamburgers, mashed potatoes, and green peas. "There you go. Dig in." Zoe's eyes lit up as she picked up her fork and knife. She happily cut into the hamburger and brought it to her mouth. I watched with a smile. "Is it good?" "Yeah." There was a brightness in Zoe's voice I'd never heard before. My chest felt warm. This child was naturally cheerful. She'd just been crushed by something. But when Zoe had eaten about half, something changed. Her hand stopped. She set her fork on the plate and stared at the hamburger. I spoke up. "Are you full already?" Zoe shook her head. Then she got down from her chair. I felt anxious. It was the same pattern again. But today was different. Today I had to ask. "Zoe, why do you only eat half?" Zoe stood there silently. I could see her small body trembling. "I have to bring this to Mommy." Her voice was small, but I heard it clearly. "The hospital has food for Mommy. She can eat properly there," I said gently. But Zoe shook her head violently. Tears welled up in her eyes. "No." Zoe's voice trembled. "If I don't bring it, because, Mommy." I stood up and knelt in front of Zoe. At her eye level. "Zoe, you can eat everything here. The hospital is taking good care of Mommy's meals. You don't need to worry." Tears streamed down Zoe's cheeks. Her small lips were trembling. And then, like a dam breaking, words poured out. "But Daddy said." "What did Daddy say?" My voice was shaking too. "If I don't bring half, Mommy can't have any food." I gasped. I felt as if all the blood in my body had frozen. And then Zoe continued. Her face was a mess of tears. "If I'm not a good girl, Mommy gets hurt. Daddy hits Mommy. Because I don't do things right." Zoe burst into sobs. It was a burden far too heavy for a 5-year-old child to carry. "It's my fault," Zoe said through her hiccups. "I put my shoes on wrong. In the morning, I put the right one on the left foot and the left one on the right foot. So Daddy got mad, and Mommy." She couldn't continue. "Mommy fell down the stairs. Because I didn't do it right, Mommy got hurt." My whole body was shaking. A 5-year-old child believed that her mother got hurt because of her. Just for putting her shoes on the wrong feet. And every day, she tried to protect her mother by saving half her food to bring to her. What terrible things had Derek drilled into this small child? I hugged the crying Zoe. Her small body kept trembling. Tears spilled from my eyes. "Zoe, listen. Listen carefully." I cupped her face in both hands. I looked at her small face, wet with tears. "Mommy getting hurt is not your fault. Absolutely not. Getting your shoes mixed up isn't bad at all. All children make mistakes. You did nothing wrong. Not one single thing." Zoe stared at me. With a look that said she couldn't believe it. "From now on, you don't have to hold back anymore. Everything is yours. You can eat it all. The people at the hospital are making sure Mommy has food. You don't need to worry about it." Zoe clung to me, crying. Her small hands gripped my shirt tightly. I kept holding her. I don't know how much time passed. I held her until Zoe's crying gradually grew quieter. Eventually Zoe became exhausted and fell asleep in my arms. I carried her to bed and gently covered her with a blanket. This time she didn't wake up. I returned to the living room and sank into the sofa. Derek's face floated through my mind. That polite smile. The upstanding citizen honored in the community. The model father who volunteered at church. It had all been a lie. He was using a 5-year-old child to control his wife. He'd made this child believe she was bad, taught her that she had to be obedient to protect her mother. And he'd probably threatened his wife that for the child's sake, she couldn't fight back. I clenched my fists tightly. My nails dug into my palms. Derek would pay for this. I would absolutely protect this child. And my sister. Something hardened into resolve in my heart. There was no turning back now. The next morning, when I got to the hospital, I went straight to Dr. Helen Carter's office. When I knocked on the door, Helen let me in with a surprised look on her face. "Meredith, what's wrong? You look pale." I sank into a chair and told her everything I'd heard from Zoe the night before. The rule about bringing half her food to her mother. That if she wasn't a good girl, her mother would be beaten. That she'd been made to believe her mother fell down the stairs because she'd put her shoes on wrong. Helen's expression gradually became stern. "This needs to be formally reported. To Child Protective Services, and to the police as well." "I know. But we need evidence, don't we?" I took out my smartphone with shaking hands. After Zoe fell asleep last night, I'd photographed the bruises on her back. Then I'd written detailed notes about what she'd told me. "This might not be enough," Helen said with a serious face. "Look into Lauren's medical records. There might be some pattern in her past visits." I accessed the hospital system. When I entered Lauren's name, her records came up. I gasped. In the past 2 years, Lauren had come to the emergency room 3 times for injuries from falls. A year ago she fell down the stairs and fractured her wrist. 6 months ago she ran into a door and cracked a rib. And now this serious injury from falling down the stairs again. It was all the same pattern. And every time, Derek had accompanied her. His words were recorded in the notes. "My wife is so careless. She's so clumsy, it's frustrating. This isn't coincidence," Helen stated flatly. "It's a typical pattern of domestic violence. The abuser accompanies the victim and controls their contact with outsiders. And the victim repeats the story the abuser created." I printed out the records. This would be evidence. That afternoon, I visited Lauren's hospital room. When I opened the door, fortunately Derek wasn't there. Lauren was sitting alone in bed, looking out the window. "Lauren." At my voice, my sister turned around. "Meredith." I pulled up a chair and sat next to my sister. Then quietly, but clearly, I said, "Tell me the truth. What has Derek been doing to you?" The color drained from Lauren's face. "What are you talking about?" "I heard it from Zoe. Everything." I took Lauren's hand. "She believes that if she's not a good girl, Mommy gets hit. Every day she was trying to save half her food to bring to you." Tears spilled from Lauren's eyes. Her lips trembled. "Zoe was trying to protect me." "Yes." Lauren covered her face with both hands. Her shoulders shook violently. "I thought I was at least protecting Zoe. Derek promised he wouldn't touch her." "But that wasn't true, was it?" I said gently. "Even if Derek didn't touch her directly, he was using her to control you." Lauren began to talk through her tears. How Derek's attitude changed a year after they married. At first it was small things. Criticizing her clothes, making her cancel plans with friends, strictly controlling how she spent money. Then the verbal abuse started. He said I was useless, that I couldn't survive without him, that I had to obey for Zoe's sake. Eventually the physical violence escalated. If she resisted, he hit her. Once, I tried to talk to a friend about it. But Derek found out. Lauren trembled. "He hit me in front of Zoe and said, 'Mommy's being punished because she's bad.' Zoe cried and apologized. She said please forgive her, she'd be a good girl." I hugged my sister. "It's going to be okay now. I'll protect you and Zoe." I promised Lauren I would introduce her to a lawyer. That I would help with the divorce proceedings and applying for a protective order. For the first time, Lauren looked at me with hope in her face. The next day, I went to the police station. I asked to meet with Detective Maria Santos from the Major Crimes Unit. Santos was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes. I presented all the evidence. Zoe's testimony, the photographs, Lauren's medical records, and my sister's statement. Santos listened seriously and took notes. "I'll investigate," she promised. A few days later, Santos called me. "Meredith, can you talk now?" "Yes." "You should sit down for this." There was tension in Santos's voice. I looked into Derek Miller's previous wife, Amanda Miller. "She died 3 years ago." I gasped. "Cause of death was head trauma. From falling down the stairs, supposedly." "Down the stairs?" I repeated. "Right. At the time it was handled as an accident. But Derek received her life insurance, $400,000. My hands were shaking. Furthermore, I looked into Lauren's life insurance. $500,000. The beneficiary was changed to Derek 2 months ago. I felt as if all the blood in my body had frozen. Derek was trying to do the same thing again. He'd killed his first wife and gotten the insurance money. And now he was planning the same for Lauren. "There's one more thing," Santos continued. "I looked into your mother Patricia Collins's bank account. For the past year, $2,000 has been deposited every month from Derek." I was speechless. The hand holding the phone was shaking. Mother was taking money. Yes. Regularly, on the first of every month. It all connected. The reason why when Lauren repeatedly asked Mother for help, Mother had pushed her away saying, "Don't interfere in married couples' business." Mother had known. And she'd been paid to stay silent. "I'm moving now," Santos said. "I'm arresting Derek Miller for attempted murder, child abuse, insurance fraud, and we're reopening the investigation into his first wife's death." I took action with Santos. Through a lawyer, we filed Lauren's divorce proceedings and applied for a protective order. We also began the process to transfer temporary custody of Zoe to me. And I reported Mother, Patricia, for evidence tampering and possible complicity. 2 days later, Derek was arrested at his workplace. He resisted violently. "This is some kind of mistake. I love my family," he shouted. But the evidence was all there. Zoe's testimony, Lauren's testimony, the medical records, the suspicions about his first wife's death, and the change of insurance beneficiary. The community was shocked. That model citizen. That good husband who'd been honored for his charity work. A murderer. Mother kept denying it, saying she didn't know anything. But bank records don't lie. I went to see Mother. At the detention center's visiting room, I looked at her through the glass. "You sold your daughter for $2,000 a month." Mother looked away. "You're being overdramatic. Couples fight everywhere." I stood up. "Don't ever come near us again." Those were the last words I said to Mother. 6 months passed. Derek's trial became national news. His first wife Amanda's death was reinvestigated as murder, and he was charged with first-degree murder. Attempted murder of Lauren, child abuse, insurance fraud. All charges were proven, and Derek received a life sentence. No parole. His real estate company went bankrupt, and all his assets went to compensate the victims. In court, Derek continued to insist until the end. He loved his family, it was all a misunderstanding. But no one believed his words. Mother Patricia was convicted as an accomplice but released with 3 years probation. She became completely isolated from the community. All her former friends distanced themselves from her. As the woman who sold her daughter for money. Mother tried to contact Lauren and me many times. But we didn't respond. To the end, Mother kept saying, "Those girls are just exaggerating." She never once expressed remorse. Lauren gradually recovered. Her injuries healed, but the wounds to her heart ran deep. She goes to PTSD counseling twice a week. She still has nightmares sometimes. But she started walking forward. The divorce was finalized. Lauren received a substantial amount from Derek's assets and rented a small apartment near mine. It's a bright place with a view of a park from the window. She started a part-time job as a library assistant. The quiet environment surrounded by books suited her. Zoe changed too. For the first few months, she couldn't break the habit of stopping at half her food. She'd stare at her plate and start to stand up. Each time I'd say gently, "It's all yours. Mommy's fine." Little by little, she became able to finish her meals. The specialized trauma therapy for children was also working. Therapist Dr. Johnson opened Zoe's heart through play. Through doll play, Zoe gradually became able to express her experiences. "This isn't a bad girl, right?" Zoe would ask about the doll. "Of course not. She's a very good girl," the therapist would answer. Zoe started calling me Auntie Mary. At first she'd formally called me Aunt Meredith, but now she uses the affectionate nickname. She still has nightmares sometimes. But she no longer wakes up terrified and apologizing like before. When she wakes up, she can come to my room and say, "I had a scary dream. And today is Sunday." The three of us, Lauren, Zoe, and I, are having lunch at my apartment. On the table is a big pot of pasta with tomato sauce. Zoe's favorite. Zoe finished her first plate. She set down her fork with a satisfied look on her face. But she was looking at her plate, seeming a little uncertain. Then in a small voice she said, "Can I have seconds?" There was still a little uncertainty in that voice. Asking for permission. But there wasn't the fear from before. I smiled. "Of course. As many times as you want." Zoe's face lit up. She stood up and went to the kitchen counter. She's serving herself a second plate. As I watched her from behind, Lauren said quietly. "She said it for the first time yesterday." "Said what?" "That she was full. Without leaving half." Tears shone in Lauren's eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. I nodded. "It takes time. But it's going to be okay." Zoe returned to her seat. She started eating her second plate of pasta with delight. Her cheeks were full and she was smiling contentedly. I thought to myself, blood doesn't make a family. The will to protect makes a family. Patricia sold her blood daughter for $2,000 a month. Derek destroyed his family with control and violence while saying, "I love you." But now, at this table, there's a real family. A family bound by something deeper than just blood ties. Zoe laughs and says, "This is good." She has tomato sauce around her mouth. Lauren gently wipes it away with a napkin. No one will make this child hold back anymore. No one will use this child as a tool for threats anymore. Zoe reached for a third plate. Lauren and I looked at each other and laughed. Outside the window, the autumn sunlight shone down gently. A new season was about to begin. A new life for the three of us. And at this table, there's always enough food. No one needs to stop at half. Here, love means freedom, not control. That was the shape of the family we'd built.